So hello from Green-Mopeds in West London. So today we're going to look at the TC Wanderer, which you could also compare to the TS Street Hunter, which is the same bike technically, just with a different body. And to put it into some sort of context from a size perspective, I've put it next to a TC Max and then an ER10 from Voge at the end there. From a performance perspective, probably not a fair comparison, but from a size perspective, it might be quite interesting to see them. So we'll do what we normally do and go around the bike, give you some information about it, and hopefully that will help you make an informed decision. So let's get to it. So everyone knows V-Moto Super Soco. Voge is imported by Lexmoto. It's a rebadge of a bike called a Sur-On White Ghost, and you still see little elements of Sur-On on the bike. For example, on the foot pegs, it still actually says Sur-On. On the motor, it still says Sur-On. But from a lineup perspective from V-Moto, when we started with V-Moto in 2017, they had one motorbike which was called the TS. Not the CPX, not the CUX, nothing, just the TS. And then the TC came out in 2018, then the TC Max in 2019. And essentially, what happened was that the TSX and the TC, they were de-restrictable. So you could take them as 28 mile an hour bike, de-restrict them up to 40, 45, and therefore you could buy them as a 28, as long as you'd done your CBT and told your insurer. If you needed more speed, you could de-restrict them. V-Moto Super Soco didn't particularly like that in the end. Technical reasons, the bikes were homologated to be 28, not homologated to be 45 mile an hour, 125cc equivalent bikes. So they've essentially made it more difficult. And in fact, I'm not sure it's even possible now to de-restrict a TC or TSX. The last one we actually tried, it didn't work. So what's happened is the TC and TSX are now firmly in the 28 mile an hour moped category bike. Okay, and now they've put this one and the Street Hunter in the middle of those two bikes and the TC Max. Okay, so the TC Max is a 60 mile an hour bike, the Voge ER10 is a 56 mile an hour bike, and the Wanderer and the Street Hunter are 45 mile an hour bikes. Originally what was going to actually happen was the TC and the TSX were going to go away, and this bike was going to come out either in a 28 mile an hour version or a 45 mile an hour version, but they wouldn't be able to be de-restricted. Okay, so I guess what they've done is they've said, right, 28 mile an hour bikes is the TC and TSX, 45 mile an hour bikes is the TC Wanderer and TS Street Hunter, and then if you want the faster bike, then you go for the TC Max, okay? But what's interesting is if you actually look at the size, okay, and this is why we put them together, look how bigger, in general, the Wanderer is. Wider tyres, still 17-inch wheels, but wider profile tyres, so it gives it more presence. You can tell that they're wider. Look at the mudguards, wider gaps in the forks, okay? It sits higher, it's got more body to it, okay? Bigger seat, if you look across the seats, okay? The ER10 is actually a single-seater only, so that explains that. But just more presence. So people do come and sit on these bikes or on the TC and the TC Max and say they're quite small. And I guess that's true. So what they've basically done is given this bike more presence. So from a design perspective, or if you're a bigger person, say, and you want something bigger, then maybe this is the bike for you, okay? Just as an aside, this is a standard feature, this little windscreen. You can actually get a smaller windscreen for the TC and TC Max, but it's come as standard. But look at the seats. I mean, more of it for sure. So more comfortable for two people. Okay. All right. So, but if you want more power, then the TC Wanderer isn't the bike for you, I would say. It's the TC Max. So to compare them, the TC Wanderer and TSX Street Hunter is 2.5 kilowatts. Okay, compare that to the TC and TSX of 1.5 kilowatts. So they've upped the power, okay, but it's still not as powerful as a TC Max or a Voge. Okay, the TC Max is 5 kilowatts, 60 mile an hour bike. Okay, so 2.5 kilowatts, 45 mile an hour bike, 5 kilowatts, 60 mile an hour, and depending on where you read, let's call it 6 kilowatts, 56 mile an hour bike on the Voge ER10. But remember, single seater, you have no choice for a passenger on that bike. Okay, so if it's speed you want, out of these three, it is the TC Max, 60 mile an hour. Can't be de-restricted, that's the way it comes. One big battery, removable at least. So there you go, 60 volt, 45 amp removable, no real space under the lid. You get a small tray, but you can't even fit the charger under there now because they've made the charger more powerful. So you've got a bit of space maybe for a disc lock, but 60 volt, 45 amp hours. Okay, now this one, you see you do get space, and that should, or does take the charger, but not a helmet. And then underneath here, you've got one or two 60, 32 amp hours. So these batteries are not interchangeable with the TC or TSX. They are a new type, pouch cells, to be honest, from ATL. So the TC and TSX are 60 by 30, okay, whereas this is 60 by 32. Obviously, you can get another one in there, okay? And with this, you've got storage. Obviously, if you only have one battery, you've got a fair bit of storage. Unfortunately, not helmet-shaped, but at least you have some, okay? Just to compare, on the Voge, this actual storage in here should take an open face helmet. Not full face, but should take open face, okay? So if it's storage, assuming single seater is okay, then the Voge would win out of that, unless of course you put a rack on the back of these bikes. Now currently, as I understand it, there is no rack available for the Wanderer or Street Hunter. It will be available. Maybe Shad will do one as well. But at the moment, it's a rucksack until the rack comes out. It might be imminent, it's just that we haven't seen it as yet. Okay? So, in terms of range, if you take the single battery bike, okay, I would say it's the TC Max that will get you more. The reason I say that is, although this bike, the ER10, has the most battery capacity, and it is fixed, this whole thing here is the battery, okay, all of that. It's 60 by 70 amp hours, so it's 4.2 kilowatt hours, okay, versus 60 by 45 on the TC Max, which is 2.7 kilowatt hours, and 60 by 32, which is about 1.9, something like that. Okay, so on paper, the ER10 should have a much more range. In practice, what we've learned is that it's the TC Max, assuming you only have a single battery on the Wanderers, is the one that will give you the most range. So we've done tests on this bike, on the TC Max, and it's 50 mile range, okay? We've done tests and had customers that tell us that they won't get 50 miles out of their ER10, okay? Some of that is because of the actual drive mechanism. So on this bike, it's chain driven, okay? So you can see the chain down there. Here you can see the connection back to Sauron, okay, as you can here. Okay, so although the capacity of an ER10 is a lot more with that big battery, the reality is the TC Max will have it, more range, okay, and slightly more speed, okay? But if you then add the second battery to the Wanderer and Street Hunter, then this will obviously have more range. And it's partly obvious because it's lower power consumption. Okay, so 60 by 32. Okay, so pouch cells, as I said. Okay, so this one, the Wanderer, Street Hunter, should give you 40 miles per battery, so let's say 30, 35. So that's a total potential range of 70. This one we know does about 50, and this one we've seen does about 40, 45. Okay, so If you want range at the forfeit of power and speed, then it is the Wanderer. Okay, so a little bit on price, because obviously that's important. So out of these three, obviously the Wanderer is the cheapest with a single battery. Okay, so that is 3,799. Okay, the next is the ER10 at 4. It's a funny figure. It's like 4,183.49, something like that. And then you've got the TC Max. Again, only one battery is 4,399. Okay, so obviously the cheapest option is the lowest powered bike. But then if you add the second battery to the Wanderer, it becomes 4,199. So about £15 more expensive than a Vogue. But of course, you're going to get probably nearly twice the range. Okay, so it depends on what you want, which is why we make these videos. If you want speed, it's the TC Max. If you want a sort of longer range bike at the forfeit of speed, then it'd be a Wanderer. If you want a sort of compromise of the two, then it might be the Vogue, okay? With the caveat of single-seater and fixed battery. Lots of times, battery choice, as in removable versus fixed, is actually the deciding factor, which is why the Vogue would not get a look-in with certain customers. They do not want fixed battery. Okay, so just to go around the bike again, so here we go, that's the hub motor, 2.5 kilowatts. TC Max is centrally mounted, so belt and Vogue you've seen, okay? One thing I've noticed about this bike is, look at the lean on the stand. I have to say that is quite a pronounced one. It's quite unnerving actually when you first put it on there. I think it's going to fall over. No centre stands on any of these bikes. Okay, that's, we haven't got a motorbike that's got a centre stand. Probably are some, but none of the ones that we do have them. You can see all of the connections back to the TC. So you've got, you know, front light is the same. The dash is the same. It's actually TC, TC Max and Wanderer are the same, just like the TSX and the TS Street Hunter is the same. Around the dash, one of the new things that they've done, which caught me out initially, was to get the bike into ready, which I can't do because I need two hands, is now you squeeze the brake and press the ready button. It's not just press the ready button, okay? Which is what you do on the TC Max and the other bikes. Okay, so they've changed that. Okay, so from a colour perspective, you've got this racing green, you have a light blue, you have a sort of, they call it yellow, but it's sort of like that. And then you have a grey, quite a nice grey. TC Max is now, the original colour was black but with silver at the bottom, and these were white. Now you've got this black with red, you've got a yellow, and you've got an orange, okay? A bit like an NIU orange over there in the background. Okay, Vogue, black only, okay, if colour's your thing. What used to happen is that the TC Max used to be able to take the panels from the TC, or still can in fact. Obviously this is a whole new design, so that's not possible. Okay. What else to tell you? 10 amp charging on both these bikes. So that's 3 to 4 hours across all of them actually, in actual fact. Obviously with the Vogue, with the fixed battery, you have to just plug it in. So on the Vogue, there's actually a charging port underneath here. As you can see, charging port here. You plug your cable directly into that. One little tip. Don't forget to close it when you actually want to use the bike, because it doesn't work like that. Okay, so in summary, the TC Wanderer 4,199 with 2 batteries, TC Max with 1 battery is 4,249, ER10 is 4,183. You're welcome for a test ride. If you'd like to arrange that, you can contact us through all the usual channels. and hopefully that will help you in your research, and thanks very much.